living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
Welcome to SPEDTalk with Pam,
and John,
also known as The Calm.
Before the Storm.
Our purpose is to elevate the conversation and amplify special education resources.
And our why is about making the impossible possible.
We're here doing this SPEDTalk thing in Waxahachie. Did I say that right?
You did.
You know, SPEDTalk, we are very blessed because we get to, from time to time, actually go out to schools around the state and sit down with educators, with administrators such as yourselves, and other ESCs in the collaboration of recording SPEDTalk. Pam and I had, when we started this podcast, gosh, three or so years ago, we did that exclusively. We traveled to the locations. We sat in that room with folks, and Pam would like to say, "Who's in the room?" And we would go around and we'll do that. But now we're doing a little bit of a combination because with COVID, we've had to adjust, and we've done a lot of the Zoom room recordings, positives and negatives, but we're blessed to be here in Waxahachie ISD today, talking about the Connecting the Dots. Is it a conference? Is it a transition fair?
Transition fair for families and students.
Awesome. And we have Pam on Zoom, and myself and Evan Heckman are here in the room. And why don't we just have you two introduce yourselves to our listeners?
I'm Brandy Pashowski. I'm the Special Ed Director for Waxahachie ISD.
I'm Sandy Cox. I'm the Transition Consultant at Region 10 Service Center.
Fabulous. And Evan, why don't you set this up for us?
Sure. Did you want Pam to introduce herself?
Absolutely. Pam, do you want to introduce yourself?
No, I'm good. It's Monday. I'm Pam with ESC Region 11, and I'm here in Fort Worth.
I'm Evan Heckman, and I'm the liaison from Region 10. And John and I, in collaboration on some SPEDTalk logistical stuff, a few weeks ago, met here in Waxahachie because it's sort of halfway between our two service centers. And at that time, we happened to sort of run into Brandy in the hallway, and Brandy's the SPED director here. And so we know each other through our SPED leadership meetings. And we just kind of explained what we were doing here. And she talked about a couple of things they had going on in the district that were cool. And that sort of led to me saying, hey, what if we got our transition person and Brandy together on an episode, because Pam is a transition person, and maybe there'd be some opportunity to not just sort of go through some transition related stuff there, but also learn about this transition fair and the relationship between districts and the service center, and sort of how multiple service centers like 11 and 12 and 10 all collaborate together. And that's kind of how this thing all came together.
I think I was put there by divine intervention to see y'all when I was walking through the hall, because this is something really important to us, and we're getting very excited. We are growing a lot here in Waxahachie, and so we really need this transition expo or fair to help support our teachers and our families and our students and the community. And so I was just really excited to have y'all come.
Absolutely.
Who's going to be at the fair? You said it was for families and students, so are you going to have agency reps or college representatives?
Actually, we're having both.
Okay.
We currently have scheduled about 36 agencies and or vendors that will be attending the Connecting the Dots Transition Fair. Actually, we have University of Oklahoma coming. We have a couple of local county colleges coming. We always have the local Intellectual and Developmental Disability Association come, agencies that serve the counties down here in Ellis County. It's real important that our families go to a fair, and the people they're actually meeting are people that can actually serve them.
Mm-hmm.
We never want to bring people from Dallas County down here, because that's not a service that they could ever hope to reference or to take advantage of. So we try to keep that in mind when we do pick our locations. And super thrilled that Brandy wanted to host. Waxahachie, in my experience in 10 years, has never been the host.
Oh, wow.
So this is the first time that Waxahachie will be the highlighted school district this year.
Well, now I'm really excited.
I know.
Janae Hill, she's the one that helped us get this started. So she's my transition specialist, and I just love her. And she really believes in what she does. And so she told me that this was going on, I was like, absolutely, please offer for us to be the host.
Well, she's a fantastic transition specialist too. In addition to our vendors and stuff, we do have breakout sessions for our families to choose from. And so we do have interpreters for families that don't speak English, maybe Spanish is their first language. And so we have My Possibilities is going to be one of our speakers this year. We're also having Barbara Bush come talk about Social Security, income, et cetera, and how that is affected as you age, and in addition to how it's affected when you begin working, so that students and families don't lose current services. We have little known secrets for paying for college. A lot of times we focus on the students on the furthest left of the continuum, which need the most support. And so we're really not looking at our students on the right-hand side of the continuum, those that are college bound that have been receiving specialized services. So we really wanted to make sure we were reaching that community as well. We always have somebody talking about guardianship. And then of course we have Texas Workforce coming, because all of our students can hopefully find something that Texas Workforce can do to help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So is the conference for the whole region or just for Ellis County?
It's open to all families. We have 2 this year, actually. Our first one is February 12th. It will be held at the Service Center in Richardson. Typically, that is more of a northern county type, but anyone's welcome. And then we have this one for Ellis County areas south on April the 2nd. So typically in the past, we've held 5 a year. Last year was our first year since COVID started that we got to hold 1. Super happy. And then we got brave and said, we're going to do 2 this year. And so we decided to do 2. Anyone is welcome. We just want to make sure our families know that whoever's there may not be serving them in the county that they live in, and just to double check before they walk away from the table.
So I imagine that scaling back had a lot to do with COVID, with everyone kind of working from home and then trying to open things back up safely. And is the plan in the future to go back to having even more than 2 if you're able to do so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We find that families really do attend in their local communities.
Yes.
We had a north, south, a east, west, and a central is kind of what we did. Since Region 10 goes all the way up almost to the Oklahoma border, when we're looking at those north counties up there in Grayson County and Fannin County, all of those families typically don't drive all the way down through Dallas. It's not their services that they'll be receiving anyway. So we're hoping, yes, to get back to having at least 4, maybe next year. Again, this year we will have our standard COVID protocol in place. You know, all of our tables are more than 6 feet apart. We're going to have hand sanitizers, masks if you prefer to wear them, recommended, not required. And so we try to make sure and do that. But above and beyond this really for students, gives them an opportunity to start self-advocating, start asking some good questions. As we know, when they turn 18, it's their game. And they need to start practicing that. And sometimes it's a great opportunity with your parent next to you to start asking some of those questions that you typically might not. It's also great fellowship for our vendors. Last year, they were so happy to see each other because no one was doing transition fairs. And so they were so excited. We have face painting. We have a fabulous balloon artist, Charles Omler. He comes and does free balloons for everyone. We've had students come and sell their business products that they make at school before. We've had candles and we've had vending tables from different school districts. So it's just a great day. It's from 9 to 2. It's a come and go. So it's not you have to buy anything. You have to come at a certain time. We do want to go ahead and put our breakout sessions out so people can plan around that. But we make sure that there's room before and after the last one so families can either come early and wander and then go to breakout, or come to breakout and then wander after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For parents, what is the most requested topic?
We know we are always promoting employment first for all of our students. We want every one of our students to be employed. There are some challenges and some things you have to balance when you're looking at a student that receives Social Security income. And so having someone there that can help families navigate. We have so many families that are fearful of losing those benefits and they hesitate to let their students work.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a fine calculation, which I'm never the one going to tell you the calculation, but there's a fine calculation that comes into play that yes, you can get up to so many hours, making so much money and still get your benefits.
Yes.
Right.
And then the second biggest one, I'm sure you have heard it a billion times, Pam, is guardianship. And what that looks like, what it does, do I need it? And Macy Melton is who's presenting this year, and she's an attorney in our area. She has a family member with a disability, and she also is an attorney. Typically, that's who we want to speak, so they have both sides of the game understood. And so she starts, and it's called the Continuum of Guardianship.
Mm.
So she starts with supported decision-making,
Mhm.
which is the preferred way to start, as
Yeah.
opposed to jumping straight into guardianship.
Sure.
These are well-versed speakers. This is something they do regularly. They go around Region 10 and speak. Now, Barbara Bush is, I think she's out of Houston. I could be a liar. Actually, she comes and drives in every single year
Wow.
for these
Wow,
fairs.
That's commitment.
that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And that's not from the Bush family, right?
No,
Just so
that's not Barbara Bush, Miss
No.
President wife, no. But equally,
Deceased.
Equally lovely. I love
equally as
that.
lovely.
Okay, just never know what you said, Sandy, so just checking.
In these past fairs that you've had, what are the age typically of the students coming with the families?
You know, that's a great question, because when we put them together, my mind, of course, is always in transition. That's my lens that I
Yeah.
always use. I'm always thrilled how many younger families come.
So that's what I was hoping for. I'm encouraging my families to come even with the younger children,
Absolutely.
younger, because I want them to start thinking ahead of time
Yeah.
and looking at finding different ways and having a good path for, and making those connections and knowing what's out there. So I think it's real important that the younger kiddos come as well.
Well, and if you're promoting that, we also need to remember that in the state of Texas, transition is now birth to 22.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And so looking at getting families signed up with agencies instantaneously upon
Yes.
identification, having them learn, call every year on your student's birthday to see where you are on the list.
Yeah.
When your student's old enough, have them call on their own birthday
Right.
to see where they are on the list.
Absolutely.
For those types of things. So I love the fact, but yes, we always have lots of young kids. So face painting is there. We typically have lots of student volunteers that need service hours, which is always lovely. Typically, those students are not individuals with disabilities.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to watch them interact. You see some teachers blossoming as they come fair after fair after fair.
Absolutely.
A couple of our teammates at Region 10, they both bring both of their children every single year, and they get service hours, but you can tell now this is going to be year 2 or 3 with each one of them. Now it's something that they want to do, and they just
Absolutely.
get service hours too. It turns out to be a wonderful day for everybody.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that in Texas now we think of transition, really it is birth, really for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We transition through stages. And the fact that, I know we have federal mandates and we have timelines we have to adhere to, ensuring that we're having ARD meetings by certain birth dates and so forth and so on. But I think sometimes we forget that as kids enter our systems, they are transitioning into our schools, and that when they transition from 3 to 4, there's a transition there. And when they transition from preschool into elementary, into middle school, into those feeder patterns, right? That these are each transitions, as well as transitions from the classroom to the bathroom, to the gymnasium, to the cafeteria. So I love that we have a much more broad definition of what we consider to be transition when we think of students with disabilities in Texas now.
And we also have a great new resource, our Texas Transition and Employment Guide. I think it's page 41. I could be a liar, but it's called Next Steps.
Yes,
And it's several pages, and it starts with 0 to 3.
that's right.
And it gives families and classroom teachers an opportunity to see things that you can work on. It's not an exhaustive list. It could never be exhaustive, but things that you can work on. And then you can monitor where you are as a family and students, marking off, I haven't started this one. Ooh, I'm in the middle. Ooh, I've already got that one, celebrate. But it goes all the way through 22. Families often ask, what can we do to help? What is it that we can do to help? And so I really want to highlight that document. I'm going to throw a shout out to Elizabeth Danner in Region 13. It was the activity that she worked on for an entire year, taking the very first version that was put out in 2018 and updating it for 2021. We both serve on a committee that supports the regional student advisory committees, which means every education service center has student advisory committees. And what we do is we share things we want information about. They're our most important stakeholder.
Absolutely.
We've never asked them questions. And so we gave them the 2018 version of the Transition and Employment Guide. And we said, hey, what do you think about this? And they said, we hate it. It's too long.
I love
There's
it.
just words, don't understand it,
Right.
would never use it. And we took that feedback.
Make it meaningful for us.
And if you could look at them side
Yeah.
by side, you would be amazed at the difference. And so amen. And thank you very much, students across Texas, for giving input, because it's a much better document.
Well, I would agree with you. And also, maybe we can pass it on to the legislature so when they legislate certain things, they can student perspective.
Absolutely. We would love to run that through. Elizabeth and I continue to do that. And anything that comes through that we need we would love to put it as an agenda item. We have 4 meetings a year with that group across the state. There's educator sponsors that facilitate for us and send in feedback. We collaborate, we put it into a report, and we send it to Texas Education Agency.
So powerful.
It is
so powerful.
ridiculous.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
crazy that you think that here we are, we're so insightful when it comes to learning and different methods and instructional practices, but that most important stakeholder group, the student, the child, has been kind of omitted from the
Silent.
evolution of education in our country, really, since its inception. And that now, how exciting, you know, you think about design thinking is something we do as liaisons, and you think about designing to the edges or the margins of society, and that when you really find a universal need, a universal approach, it helps all of humanity. And I think the fact that in this area of education, we are really seeking student input.
Absolutely.
You know, a child's or a young adult's student's voice in this process really empowers what we do to help ensure that what we're doing is meaningful.
Yes, and it is just a great document. I mean, there's an entire section on assistance for families that's statewide. Hopefully, we're going to have some copies of those available. Maybe a print job for Region 10, but I like to have some of those in English and Spanish for all of our families to enjoy.
And so for our listeners who may not understand that, you make sure you're on the list or.
Oh, the Medicaid waiver list and the HCS class list.
There you go. Would you kind of explain that?
Well, so families early on, some of our students are going to need additional support. Some that may be supported housing, other kinds of services. There are waiting lists in Texas, unfortunately. Some of those lists are up to 15 years long. So the earliest we can get our families on those lists, and we recommend you sign up for everything. It may come to pass that you don't qualify for anything, but it's better to know that you don't qualify for anything and you're fine. But you need everything and you never applied.
That's right.
So those are the
15 years long. So just stop for a minute. Like I just want to emphasize that for listeners, if there's a parent out there that's listening to this, and maybe a younger child, and to think that there could be a waiting list that your child may need to be on that could be as long as 15 years. We have to start yesterday on this, right? This is something we really have to prioritize and let parents know.
And it's challenging because parents are listening for different things at different age times of their students' progression through special education. We have to make that priority. I have told families, this is my 30th year, I've told families all along, and I've had families say, nobody ever told me that.
Right.
And I would look at them in the face and said, it was me. I've told you for the last 5 years. But what parents hear and what they're told may not be the same thing. And so continually just readdress it, because 15 and 15 is 30. So, I mean, that's a long time for parents who may not have planned to give that much care.
So elaborate on that a little bit. 15 and 15 is 30. I think I know what you're reflecting on. The age of 15 and 15 years from that point on.
Right.
But that's the reality for so many of our families that are trying to navigate these processes for their children that are coming through special education that may need services. If we wait till they're 15, it may be 30 before they ever even have the benefit of receiving any of these or some of these services.
If they qualify, and that means families may not be financially ready for that extended stay in the home. Aging parents is always an issue. It's vital that we let immediately, as soon as a student is identified as eligible for special ed services, that we need to have that as part of our onboarding. We give them a lot. Parents are overwhelmed. The first full individual evaluation has probably really got to be pretty sobering for some families. And so maybe not hit them all at the same time, but I think there should be some kind of checklist that we say, we've established eligibility. Okay, let's lay on that for a little bit. Within this first year, we need to make sure make sure they get on the waiting list, make sure that they're accessing all services that are available. And again, I need to look through the next steps. I don't know if that's part of it, but I think we need some kind of onboarding to help families move through that process.
Well, you know what, I think it's so hard for parents when their child is first identified and sometimes they don't, you can't even think that far. It's hard enough for any of us to think that far.
Right.
And so we've been really trying to encourage our parents that even just putting the name on the list doesn't mean we'll even need it. but it's there just in case. It's that safety net. And we really try to talk to it through that lens for the parent, because just embracing the whole idea of that might in 15 years need all that.
That's right.
It's tough. And so I think, like you said, having an onboarding and just saying, hey, go ahead and what's it going to hurt to sign up for the list? And
That's
then
right.
if you opt down the road, you don't want it, or you don't feel like your child needs it, then that's fine.
And that's a great point, Brandy, too, because some families do get on the list right on time
Mhm.
and they do call early. Maybe it is 13 years. Woo, early,
Right.
13 years instead of 15 years.
Yeah.
We need our families to know, never say we don't need it.
Right.
You need something. Because if you say no, there's not a, we don't need services right now bucket. You go back to the bottom of the
Oh,
list.
wow.
And so those are some of those things we need to let our families
Those are
know
those
too.
hard lessons. learned
Absolutely. And I
sometimes.
can't imagine doing all the good work to say no and feeling like I don't want to take services from someone else because
Sure.
I really don't need them now. And all your hard work of being diligent being erased.
Yeah.
So even if it's an hour respite, even if whatever it is that
Right.
you qualify for, make sure that you establish something
Sure.
so that you are already a recipient of services, and those could expand as needed.
Sandy, let me ask something. How prepared do you feel schools are, just even across your region, to understand kind of this change in expectation at the school level to really facilitate these processes, these parents knowing how to get on what lists and when to get on them, and the guardianship, that big one? How well do you think our schools are still trying to understand their role in this process?
I do. I really think that we're continuing to try to fill in those gaps. Every school district and charter has a transition and employment designee. That's required. That's regulatory. And so we have a community of practice. We call them TEDs for
Mhm.
ease.
Mhm.
We have a community of practice of TEDs through the network. And so every ESC is represented. I have the privilege of facilitating that group. And even that group, application required, we knew they were kind of go-getters, kind of ready. They didn't even have a good understanding of what the agencies were providing. And
Yeah.
the TED is the go-to for the school district or charter. That's your, everything in quotation marks. And so working with that group, we've been having the agencies come in and trying to give them some speaking points, some things that they could talk to and get more confident. And I think it's confidence. I can tell you agency has never been my best suit. And so that whole piece about knowing what agencies to send
Yes.
families to, I think that is still a huge hurdle. And people typically wait until age 14, which is when transition planning is required to start in the state of Texas. You should start way sooner than that.
Well, I think you're speaking to something that historically has been when there is a federal or a state regulation in schools, we try to ensure that we are following the rules and doing the letter of the law, black and white. It says at 14, we're going to start doing this. So at 14, and if it's 15, and if it, let's do these. And in reality, that's what I love in the state of Texas right now. It's really from the agency all the way down through Texas transition to our ESCs. We're trying to change the conversation about transition. And I think that's exactly what you're expressing is we can't wait till they're 14 to start the process.
And I do want to say that's not required that we wait until 14. I want that to be really clear.
Yeah.
You can begin transition planning at any time it's appropriate.
Yeah.
The earliest I've ever done transition planning was for a student who was 10 years old, who was significantly involved, had significant health needs. Everything about his life had to be done for him.
Mhm.
He had great eyelashes. Oh, love Sam. Beautiful smile. Quick, witty, but his body was not going to participate.
Yeah.
And so we worked with him and found out from him that he felt lonely in his own home because he had to stay in his hospital bed in his room. And his family would come visit him there, but he felt lonely in his own home. And I said, what is that? He said, I can't watch football in the living room with my family. I'm not in there in the dining room when they're eating dinner, whether I'm participating or not. So we started early because it was going to take a long time to get services for him.
Sure.
But part of what we did early was we had a company come in and they cut a track through every doorway and put a track so Sam could be transported from his hospital bed to any place in the entire house to be a participant of living in that house, not living in his room.
Yes.
And that changed everything for Sam.
Yes.
So don't hesitate. And any family that's listening, if you want to start transition planning, you ask your ARD committee. We need to start thinking about some transition planning. And that's certainly something that we'll do. self-advocacy, social skills, behavioral skills, all of those are going to be transferable to life after high school. We will start as
Absolutely.
early as you ask.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm going to ask something here. I've been listening. I've been sort of reminiscing at the same time. Right, Sandy, you and I worked together in a district, about 9 years ago. I remember as a principal sitting in those ARDs at the high school level, hearing you talk about, right, we need to get on these lists. We need to start this process early. And so that's kind of coming full circle. You mentioned about the Connecting the Dots expo that our fair, transition fair, that it would be great for students and families with students who receive special education services of all ages to come, right? Brandy said she's encouraging her families of all ages to come. If we think about everything that we just said in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and we think about the fair itself, you mentioned some of the things happening at the fair. You mentioned there were some breakout sessions. What type of things could families hope to get from attending the fair that might enlighten them, inform them, and assist them through some of the things that we've been talking about for the last 15
Absolutely.
minutes?
Great
That's a
question.
great question. So we do want our early childhood special education families to attend. Those are our ECSE kiddos. That's 3 and up. We want you to attend. We do have our Region 10 early childhood special education consultants going to be there, so they'll be able to answer some questions for you. Comfortable atmosphere to talk to agencies. It isn't as stiff as it would be maybe making an appointment and going to an office.
Mhm.
You can kind of get some peripheral information and decide if you want to pursue. You can get business cards. There are snacks. There's candies on tables. I don't want to not put the candy on the table out there, but there is just, it's a whole different atmosphere. It doesn't feel so scary.
Yeah.
It's very casual. And so we do have agencies there that families will need to be getting involved with, and they will tell you that, and they will even help one another. The best thing about these fairs is these vendors are not in competition.
Mhm.
They are all in cooperation for making sure our students and families have what they need once they're no longer in public school. And what will that look like after they exit? Public school is only there for a finite period of time. There's a lot longer of a lifetime after us than there is with us. And that's our charge, is to make sure our students and families have access to the information to make really good decisions on what they need and how they can support a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember, when I was working directly with parents and being the state parent lead, one conversation I had with one parent was, she said, I spent a lot of energy focusing on school, but I didn't look at my son's adult life and what that was going to be. And I didn't put the energies into really understanding the agencies and what was being offered. I mean, she was she was one of those conscientious parents. She got on the list, but she didn't realize, even once you start getting services from different agencies, you have to understand how those agencies work. Schools are totally different. You come, we're going to serve you. Whereas agencies, you have to be eligible for the services, and then some of the services are limited just because the nature of the services. And that was one of the biggest regret, was that the energies that she put in with the school, not that it was bad, but she realized she could have been using her time to really learn more about the different agencies and how to navigate them more efficiently than that. And she was pretty, I would say, very well informed, but yet realizing that when you get to adult agencies, the games change, the rules are different, and you have to understand their rules, as opposed to where schools, you can go to an ARD meeting, IEP meeting, and people can agree to it or not agree to it. But whereas when you look at agencies, if you're not eligible for those services, then you're not eligible for those services.
Yeah.
And that's a hard bridge to cross, moving from eligible for everything to entitled to everything, and now are you eligible for anything?
That's right.
Right.
Dr. Vicki Mitchell has a great activity that she does, and it's very simple. So families, you can do this yourselves. Write a calendar, Monday through Sunday, school hours. What is your student doing currently? Now, do the exact same calendar the first day they don't have public school in their day.
That's powerful.
When you look at what is left in a student's schedule, if it has not included great transition planning, we are pushing a student from a full day service, 12 straight years, maybe longer, of every day, to absolutely nothing.
Right.
And so that's part of the process of transition planning too, is to make sure that their day is fulfilling, that it's filled with things that enhance their life, that make them feel productive. And it doesn't have to be full. It needs to be full for them.
Sure.
And that's what we're working on. So families, we're pushing hard for good reasons. And that's hard to wrap your brain around when you're talking to a four-year-old parent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Well, also think about graduation should be the beginning and not the end.
Yes.
And unfortunately, for some of my students, it becomes the end. And that's not what we're wanting. We want them to have as you said, Sandy, a full life and doing things that they enjoy doing and not just being at home or just
I think we focus on is employment, which is highly important. I don't want us to ever forget about the socialization factor.
Right.
Because I know I don't work 24 hours a day.
That's right.
I have fun, I have friends, I have activities. And I think as school people, we are always focused on academics, making sure they get a job. Let us not forget that a huge portion of our life will not be work.
That's right.
And
Exactly.
how to increase our socialization and activities.
Yes.
So
Right.
when you're looking at your student's IEP meeting and you look at that coordinated set of activities in your IEP documents, when it talks about community experiences, if your student is currently in special education and is participating in Special Olympics through school, maybe we want to investigate, is there Special Olympics or some type of activity that mirrors that will be
Yes.
available for them after school? So they already know about it. So when they exit, it's just a natural progression into that particular division of a Special Olympics participation. So
Yeah.
let's not forget that part of a kid's life.
And I want to remind them it's so important that they have their own thing. My aunt with disabilities, she needed her own stuff. A lot of parents will think, well, they'll just come with us. They'll live
Right.
with us.
Right.
But they need to have their own community and their own things to do and their own interests. Because if they don't, then they're bored.
Right.
And that's a better life for them. So definitely look at those things that they like and the things that they're interested in and really take
Stock in it.
take stock
Right.
of input from the child
Yes.
into what they like and not
Yes.
just what the parents are doing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Because-
there you have it.
What we know is just from research is that, depression among young people with disability was higher than those without disabilities. And part of it had to do with the isolation, was that
Yeah.
you go from a very active life in school and active, for the students being around people, and then to go home and not have those relationships or the social activities became very detrimental to some kids. Is that you have to think about, as you said, Sandy, just with, the rec and leisure, the social activities, because we're all are social beings, and we like interacting with others and ensuring that young people have the opportunity to continue to interact with others, and not just nothing wrong with just family that they have others. I'm always fascinated by there's like apps and there's a group that calls Meetup, and I always thought about would it be cool for students, now they're young adults, to have meetups where they go to a restaurant, parents, probably would have to drop them off or whatever, but let them hang out like typical 18, 19, 20-year-olds hang out.
Yeah, then they have their own story when somebody says, what did you do today?
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
they went somewhere for themselves
right.
too.
That's
Right.
Really important.
Pam, that makes me think of, like time that I've had organizations like Best Buddies come in and talk to our directors in Region 12, or like the episode we just recorded with Biddy and Bo's coffee shop that are opening up around, there was an Empower coffee shop. I think the more and more that we normalize relationships from an early age on, and we talk a lot about that word inclusion. And I think sometimes we mistake what we understand inclusion to be as mainstreaming students. And unfortunately, I think that so often children enter our school systems and we teach them to separate instead of figuring out how, education is messy. It's hard to make it work and to make it work right. Things like co-teach, things like an inclusive mindset and having campuses and classrooms that are accepting and value in each and every child that walk in. Not just, I think I can teach that kid, but that child can add value to my classroom.
Right.
You know, and so that's a different way of thinking. But I think the more our schools and our businesses move in that direction, the more everything we're talking about today becomes a smaller hill to climb. And so that's just kind of a thought I had.
Yeah. Well, John, you know, you had said many times to include mean you have to mentally make a decision to exclude, you know, because we wouldn't be talking about inclusion if we did not
Exclude others.
exactly, you know, it would just be people, it'd be students, you know, as opposed to, you know, having to advocate and demonstrate, yes, the students can grow within this classroom or within this setting, and move from the mindset of, well, we need to exclude them because of his or her disability, or
Yeah.
because of whatever reason it is.
Yes.
In my language. where I
Well,
think-
Go back in the future and talk a little bit about that, because I know there's a great co-teach thing going on here in
Yes,
Waxahachie.
yes, we are doing that, and we're moving towards, we're trying to get rid of learning labs
Uh-huh.
because we feel like those kiddos just need to be in class, making that curriculum about, so the exclusion piece, or they have to fit, we're gonna make the curriculum fit them.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about it.
Let me jump in here with some of the things that you've said and how I can tie them together, and then bring it back to Sandy for just
Yes,
a
we
minute
will.
here, because you talk about something that you're going to put into practice. And we talked about Pam referencing something that John has said, and John used the phrase way of thinking. And earlier he said, are you starting with the end in mind? And what all that sort of comes back to me is that there's a mindset, particular mindset. We talk about the word transition, and we started this conversation a while ago with transition being from birth to 22, when you transition from being at home to being at school for the first time, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, or kindergartner. As we talk about the Connecting the Dots Expo being a transition fair, that word transition really means every other next thing that you do.
Mhm.
So as parents, or as community members, or as students want to participate in this fair that is being put on in collaboration and cooperation between Region 10 and Waxahachie ISD, are there any topics, is there anything that jumps out at you that a parent can say, oh, that will really help me to understand, or maybe change my way of thinking about transition, just being, well, we have to wait till high school or whatever? Is there something that you think of that's going to take place at this Connecting the Dots that will help people to understand and have a mindset of, this is how we help our students with transition?
I really think that some of our breakout sessions will do that. I do want to remind families, this is free. There is no registration required. It is a come and go as you are able to come. But looking at who is presenting in our breakout sessions, understanding navigating life after 18. When Barbara Bush, when she talks about navigating life after 18, she rewinds. When do we need to start navigating for life after 18? Texas workforce used to only work with our exiting students. They can now work with our students at 14 for those students that are potentially eligible. Looking at guardianship, again, that can't even begin until 90 days before a student's 18th birthday. However, if families hear these options, if families help students start making decisions now and giving them those opportunities, they may see more competence in their children than they might have had they not started giving those opportunities.
Amen.
So if you look through, and I'm just going to throw imdetermined.org out there, it is an entire website free to anyone that has an entire book on self-advocacy and how families can help. But all of these things are planting the seeds. Please don't wait till 14. Families, when you ask us what you need you to help us with, have your children make choices. Controlled choice is still choice making. You want to wear the red socks or the blue socks? You want broccoli or cauliflower? It makes no difference. Students have a voice. They start using their voice. It becomes powerful for them in a way that they can carry on. So yes, Evan, I think any of those breakout sessions would get the seeds started to see, where could my student be? And I want families to say, what few services will I need? Because we've been working on this for so long. They've already managed to be in a place I never anticipated.
Absolutely.
So always assume competency for a
Absolutely.
student.
Yes, well said. Well, Pam, do you have any last thoughts, questions as we wrap things up today?
No, I don't think so, John. I think we can wrap it up.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on Sped Talk. I think this is going to be a fabulous episode.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, did we say the date of the conference?
Yes, there's two. I'm gonna Waxahachie, I love you, but I'm gonna throw in Richardson up there too. So February 12th in Richardson at the Education Service Center at 400 East Spring Valley from 9 to 2. And then we will also be at Global High School on April the 2nd in Waxahachie. It will be from 9 to 2, free to all. Everyone come.
Fabulous. So listeners, come, bring your students, come and.
John, tell everyone how they can continue to elevate the conversation about special education in Texas.
You got it, Pam. They can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at SPEDTalk 2020. Because in these disconnected times, connecting with others has never been so important. Now more than ever, it takes courage to create culture and kindness to keep us connected.
If you enjoyed this episode of Sped Talk, be sure to share it with a friend, because information should always flow through us, not to us. We couldn't do this without you, our listeners, and we need your help sharing the amazing transformation occurring in special education. Together, we can change the trajectory of learning opportunities in Texas for students with disabilities. If you have ideas, information, or resources that you think we should share on an upcoming episode of Sped Talk, let us know at SPEDTalk 2020 on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And be sure to like our page while you're there. Oh yeah, and if you get a chance, please consider giving us a positive review on the podcast platform that you listen to Sped Talk.
Living in the moment, and the moment is the future.